Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
Despite HBO's best efforts to sniff us out, to make sure we couldn't watch the Chicago Bears on this fine Tuesday evening, we made it. We got through it. Even on the East Coast here, where it's, 11:20 p.m. by now, we got through the episode. This is Bears on Tap. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ron Luce. Ron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Q. I feel like I was one of the few people that actually watched it at the normal televised time tonight.
Right.
But I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm hanging out. It's good to be back. Bears football in a hot minute, especially with you, sir. So I'm excited to dive into tonight's episode and talk a little Bears.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start this off with just recapping the episode. And early on in the episode, I don't know about you. I mean, it started off just looking at the one trophy in the practice facility there at Hallis Hall, and it was just like, man, it looks lonely. That was the thought that I came away from the intro with. Like, that trophy needs some company.
That trophy has needed company for a long time, Q. I'm right there with you. I feel like every time I ever see them, any Bears marketing, right? Like, not even just Hard Knocks, like in general, they always are like so proud of this trophy that's been sitting there all by its lonesome for what, next season's going to be 4 years since the Bears won the Super Bowl in '85.
Yeah.
Like,
oh God.
It's about due time that it gets another friend in Hallis Hall, and maybe it's not this season, but hopefully it's in the near future because things are looking up. Things are looking up.
Yeah, they got to. And then moving on from that, I mean, after that intro, I mean, that was like a quick few seconds, but then we got to really, it just felt like work. Like, it was like work, all montage. And I couldn't help but feel like, and maybe some of it's just because last year was the Jets, and it all felt very gimmicky, very, oh, look at this magician. Look at that. Like, it didn't feel the same way as this. But I feel like the last few years didn't feel the same way, where it's like, man, I just feel like there's a working culture building there, or built there within the Bears Foundation, that is kind of coming through the show a little, to me at least. And maybe some of that's HBO working, like playing up on a blue collar city that, loves that aspect of it. But I'm really just getting the feeling from this team that they are there to work every day. And it's something that I really love to see.
Agreed. I'm going to put a little bit of a tinfoil hat take on this one too. I wonder how much Caskey's in the ear of HBO of like, hey, don't include that. Hey, don't include that. Hey, don't include that. Don't go to the same levels. Now, I'm not saying that's the exact case, right? I'm very much playing devil's advocate here, but I do think it plays into the Eberflus, kind of culture, right? Like, I think we've seen it in some of the all access stuff that the Bears have provided over the last couple seasons. I think it's been a lot of fun to see that work aspect of it too, right? Because like you said, sometimes you don't always get that, but I wonder if there's some tinkering behind the scenes, but they're getting after it. And honestly, I'm not mad about it, especially after how piss poor this team has been for so many years.
Yeah, no, and it's, I mean, one of my notes here they have under that I wrote down a little after I wrote that first note was like, though, that work, I feel like it was showing through in the trenches in the last preseason game. Like these guys putting the hard hat on a little bit. Like, I felt like the trenches were really trying to set the tone quite a bit this past week. So I don't know. I do think there's a little something there, but ultimately, I think you're probably right. The McCaskies know what sells for their franchise, and they have final editing rights here. And they're like, well, we got to show what we do. And this is what we do. Like, which is kind of funny. The next thing that I noticed that was interesting was early in the episode, Shane Waldron was talking, and he said, one drive if you guys do it right to the offense, two drives if we need some stuff to clean up. And as we know, the offense played two drives. I believe it was only two. That I didn't believe they come out for a third, but two drives in the preseason game. So that's interesting to me that they felt like there was that much to clean up still, that they were like, okay, you guys are going back out there for a second drive.
Yeah, I wonder if some of that too, though, just from like if you look at the nature of those drives, because right, you get the first pass play from Caleb, incomplete. He throws it out of bounds. There's a flag, right? That's one thing you could argue that they wanted to clean up. In addition to that, you continue persisting forward in the drive, and you had the sweet little dump off and the screen to Swift, but like that was the big chunk play of the drive, right? And then they all go away with points. I think that's why they went back out for the second drive. It was like, hey, it's great that we got three, but 42 yards of our drive came on one singular play, which was a great play by DeAndre Swift and Caleb Williams, respectively. So,
but one that Caleb kind of had to clean up.
yeah, I think I think there was a lot. I think the penalties and such too in the first drive probably played into that as well. Overall, man, you know what? I like that though. Like at the end of it, because Shane Waldron's not content with them coming out and getting 3 points quickly on the first drive. He's like, no, go out there, run this shit the right way. And then we can sit here and talk, and you guys can get out of the game when it's all said and done. So I do think that's an interesting point, Q. I'm glad you actually emphasized that a little more, because I feel like that went maybe kind of past a lot of people's perspective in terms of watching the show, right? You watch it the first time, you're just excited to see it. And then you kind of put the pieces back together at the end of the show, and you think about that, and you're like, oh, wait, he did say one drive if you do it right. And they went out for two. So clearly he did not like what he saw on that first drive from the Bears. And the second drive, largely, if we're being brutally honest, was much, much better from Caleb and, the rest of it entirely.
Yeah, no, definitely much better. And we got a comment here from Taminatu. Tamina too. You know better than I do, evidently. But Karan Amagaji. I was looking at the spelling there, Amaji, and I was like, I just got thrown off in my head. Karan Amagaji is getting back into practice, so hope he gets a segment for next week. Another hometown kid, and that's actually something a little later in the episode we'll talk about what we think is coming up next. That's one of the things that I think is coming up next, the hometown heroes idea of like, getting the Jack Sanborn, the Karan Amagaji, there's a handful of other guys, Will Mallory, I believe, or Deshaun Mallory, not Will Mallory, Deshaun Mallory, a handful of hometown kids on the Bears roster. TJ Edwards, exactly. I think that we're going to get something like that down here sometime here soon. One thing that I thought I liked, but it is just a little different, was when the quarterbacks were just kind of, BSing in the quarterback room. Caleb was rolling out his legs on like a one of those like little balls that you roll out muscles with.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that. I like the fact that even in the downtime, he's doing something to take care of his body, which is probably reading too much into something. But that's what this show's about, right? The show's about us looking at something and being like, oh, that's the reason why he's so good. Like that, finding little things like that. But I do like to see that a guy who's 22 years old. A lot of 22-year-olds have never used a roller in their life. Never worried about muscle spasm or like getting tightened up or anything. Him taking care of his body like that, even just in a little moment, is something that I like to see.
Yeah, I do think there's more to that, Q, than you might think, because as a former football player collegiately myself, my first 2 years of college, more so my freshman year than maybe my sophomore year. Sophomore year, I sustained an injury, so I was in there a lot more than I would have been. Like, you don't know what the hell the training room is. It really is like you go practice, you sit around between meetings, you're all sore and you're like, oh, is this what it always is? It wasn't until my junior year, and then very much in my senior year, that like you come to appreciate the training room and you appreciate rolling out in between practices. And like it got to a point in essentially what these guys are going through, right? Like training camp. Big shout out to St. Xavier, by the way. They just kicked off training camp yesterday for their 2024 season here. But like you really, the guys that truly are there to take care of their bodies, like you're in the training room between every practice, you're in the cold tub as much as possible, you're rolling out. And I've seen that from a lot of former teammates of mine rolling out in meetings like that, because sometimes that's just the only opportunity you have, especially for a guy like Caleb, who he's in the offensive line meetings. They showed him all the offensive linemen when Theo Benedict got up there and was, talking about some of the jokes and stuff. You see him in the receiver meet, like because he's the quarterback, he's in all these different meetings. That's probably the only time he actually gets to do that. And so I do think there's more to that, Q, than you might think, or other people might think. So I think it's good that you were excited about that, because it shows he's mature in the sense that he understands what it means to take care of his body.
Now, the next thing that hit me, I mean, there were a few other notes I had between this, but I think those are more for the article that I'm going to write to pair with this podcast, which make sure you go read if you miss anything in this podcast. But
humble little sprinkle of foreshadowing. We like that.
So ever since I started thinking about Rome Odunze as a draft prospect, right? There's been one thing itching at me with him of just like, Marvin Harrison Jr., absolute dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see it. It's in his personality. It's all the way there. Malik Neighbors, maybe a little too much dog, but you want that in your wide receiver, right? You want a little cockiness. You want a little brashness. And I had yet to see it in Rome. Like you see it a little bit in some celebrations in his college games and stuff, but I don't know that I want my wide receiver to be too nice of a guy. And Rome is seems like the definition of too nice at times.
Yeah.
But man, that was a bold decision to get up there and start rapping Lil Wayne on his rookie song. Like that felt like a dog moment to me, and I was just glad to see it. It was almost a little bit of like, here I am. Like I ain't worried about none of you in here. I'm doing my thing, and that just, I felt a little comforted seeing that from Rome, just from the perspective of like, I didn't know how much that he had in him.
I do genuinely the Kiss choice, a true classic from the great Chris Brown featuring Teddy Payne. It was a good song choice, first off. That was definitely one of my notes that I pointed out because I actually enjoyed that segment of the show and I got a good laugh out of it. I do wonder, Q, and this might pertain to one of the points that we're going to talk about a little bit later, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, and we'll bring up a little bit later. I think because there's only certain players that we saw in a lot of the quote-unquote game action, that maybe we haven't totally seen that dog yet from Rome. That he might have, right? Because there's a lot of guys that you meet them off the field and they're the nicest dude on the face of the planet, and then all of a sudden they step between those white lines and they're, the biggest pieces of shit that you'll ever meet. A lot of guys that are like that, and that's just the nature of being a football player, right? So I wonder if there's something there that we haven't quite seen yet with Rome.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and I think the common conception with it when you bring it up to people is, well, Larry Fitzgerald. But Larry Fitzgerald's one of one. I have a really hard time saying that Larry Fitzgerald is common in the NFL from a personality standpoint at wide receiver. It's just, I believe that there is something more there, and I think you're right, but I just want to see it, and I hope that we do get to see it here coming up again, because like I said, I thought him getting up there and singing that song, like that showed it a little bit to me. I just want to see it some more, a bit more consistently. And ultimately, if he does what he's supposed to on the field, it won't matter. Like we know the talent's there.
Absolutely.
The next thing that I've got written down here, Valus, his Crash Bandicoot comment felt pretty funny because I feel like he kind of is Crash Bandicoot in some ways.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. But there was a comment from one of the coaches of he has to live in the playbook that really stood out to me. I wonder how much he's struggled with playbooks so far. Like that comment just hit me as something a little more than just a face level comment.
Yeah, and I wonder maybe if that's part of the reason that we've got to seeing him a little bit at running back too, right? Just by nature, running back in most offenses is typically a little bit more of a simple position to learn from an X's and O's standpoint. It's more instinctive, right? You're in either pass blocking, you're either pass blocking and releasing, or you're very rarely out on some type of route. There's so many routes that you can run out of the backfield. Otherwise, you're taking the ball, you're reading what you see in front of you, and you're going for it. Especially in the NFL, right? There's not a lot of counter tray. There's not a lot of that unless you're in a Shanahan offense and it's CMC running behind Trent Williams. Otherwise, it's a lot of outside zone, inside zone, where the running back does have to make a lot of decision making based off of what he sees. So I wonder if that plays into it too, right? Like maybe they said, hey, he's going to pick up the playbook from a receiving standpoint. We know the type of athlete this guy is when he has the ball in his hands. What better way to get the ball in his hands than to move him to running back? And you know what? I thought about this a lot over the last 2 years, Q, and I never really said it because it never felt relevant until now. I see so many comparisons from Velus Jones Jr. to Cordero Patterson for me personally, right? Like he's electric in the kick return game. He never quite figured it out as a receiver. He was kind of a one-trick pony as a receiver in college. They both went to Tennessee. And, ultimately his best quote-unquote position in the NFL was running back. I wonder if we see Velus Jones Jr. kind of take that full transition. And maybe that's a part of it is because he can't quite catch up on what an NFL receiver needs to do because let's be honest, most of the criticism of him coming out of college was he never ran the full route tree. And maybe you're starting to see some of that as to why.
Yeah. And I mean, when Velus got drafted, Cordero Patterson hadn't really made the transition to running back yet, right? Like he
was like
he
tinkering with
it. Some snaps, but it wasn't like he was that Atlanta running back that he became yet. And I almost wonder if you go back in time and put Velus back in this draft, his comps probably wouldn't have been Debo. They would have been Cordero Patterson because 100%. It was a lot more reasonable. The reason they kept coming back to Debo was like, well, the college usage matches, the age is somewhat similar, the measurables are somewhat similar, and his style of play, there's just no one else who does that. Like there's no one else who fits this same type of archetype. And Debo was always too rich for Velus, like way too rich. Yeah. But it was the only one that really made sense. He was the only receiver who was really used that way that you could see Velus being used in. And I think Patterson makes a lot more sense now in hindsight of like, yeah, Patterson kind of became that player.
And who I think might have been maybe a more, because here's the problem. I think when guys are coming out of college, like the easy comp strategy is to find somebody in the NFL that's current. I would have almost made the argument, especially because, Patterson was still kind of making his way from being just exclusively a special teamer to a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife on offense. Percy Harvin was the same way when he got to the NFL, right? Like he never quite was a true receiver. He was more of a gadget player in a lot of ways. They used him in the run game quite a bit because that's what he did in college at Florida. And he was an electric special teams returner. Like that's what he was, right? So and now granted, I think Harvin was probably a better receiver, especially at least in college than like a Velus was. But if you're thinking in the NFL stance of what did they do at the next level, you could have made that call. But because Percy Harvin hasn't played in the NFL in a decade, that's probably why it wasn't made. You know what I mean? Right. So I think that's the problem is a lot of times these insiders, analysts, scouts, whatever you want to terminology they are, a lot of them are looking for that player that's current in the NFL, that means something in the NFL. And sometimes that guy just doesn't exist. Sometimes you got to turn back the page in order to find a better comp for a lot of these guys coming out of school. But to your point, I do wonder maybe because, right, we saw that Cordero Patterson kind of flair really start to take fold in Atlanta over the last 2 seasons, 23, 22.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if, let's say that had started for him in maybe 21. I wonder if a lot of people looked at Bayless and went, son of a bitch. Like, yeah, he's a receiver. He's a really good returner, but he's big enough to play running back.
Yeah.
Like, could he be that next Cordero? Sometimes you need that trailblazer. We talk about it, and I say the collective we as football fans, right? Like the Vince Youngs before the mobile quarterback was really a thing in the NFL. And, and so many of these type of guys, like Bayless feels like that type of guy in a lot of ways. And maybe the Bears are riding the ship with him because, let's be frank, you have 2 years of control yet with him, right? 4-year contract for a 3rd-round pick. So this will be year 3 for Bayless Jones Jr. Give him 2 years to be a running back and make a name for himself. And maybe he does find a way to actually finally contribute on this roster more than being a guy that we sit here on Sundays and bitch more about than we do praise.
Yeah, no, I mean, you'd love to see it. The way he runs the football is like as a ball carrier, he is a fun guy to watch. It's just the matter of getting that ball in his hands. It's been such an issue.
Exactly. You're 100% right.
And I thought the show did a really masterful job of introducing Ian Wheeler. I really did. 'Cause, I mean, I knew nothing about Ian Wheeler other than, small school, like HBCU guy who I know very little about. He plays running back. I know he has a lot of special teams experience. And I'm sitting there watching it, and, it starts off with the coach just, essentially just consistently telling him, gotta get low, gotta bring some power to him. And I'm like, okay, I guess he's more of a power back. I don't know anything about him. I'm like, okay, so he wants to be running through people. And then it turns to him making some mistakes and not really breaking any tackles. And it's like, okay, I mean, there might not be a lot here. And then you see him hit the open field. And you're just like, oh, this dude's got wheels. This dude can move. Like, and suddenly I'm getting excited about him. I thought that buildup was really nice from Hard Knocks of like, I have no idea what to expect from this player. And they're putting an idea in my head of what it should be. And it's completely different than what it actually is. Because I mean, even when they're panning the camera away from him on one of the early moments, it's like, man, he's got some skinny legs. I don't know. And it's like, you can have skinny legs and you're that fast.
Oh yeah. I think that's the beauty of like Hard Knocks does, right? This is where the NFL films aspect of it comes into play and how masterful they are in the sense of setting up the storyline and creating a plot and kind of playing with the minds of the viewers over the course of the show. Ian Wheeler, I mean, by all accounts, when he was signed, a lot of people were like, yeah, this guy's had a lot of college success, but like, can he do it at the NFL level, right? There was a lot of that uncertainty because he is an undrafted free agent. He plays a position that the Bears just heavily invested in from the standpoint of signing DeAndre Swift to a multi-year deal while still having Roshan Johnson, who was a 4th-round pick from just a season ago, and Khalil Herbert, who has had a ton of experience and action at the NFL level. But yet, like you said, Q, right at the end of it, we're all kind of sitting there and it's like, whoa, homeboy can hit the hole just fine. Oh, homeboy's got some speed. Okay, it's good to see. And then that translates over to when we finally get to see some of the highlights of the Bills game from Saturday, and you see him punch it in twice at the end of the game and get those meaningful reps. And I think the one final thought I have in terms of the art of creative deception from Hard Knocks is just it really does lay out what a real practice looks like for 99% of players, especially young players. As somebody who can relate to it as a freshman in college, watching other freshmen in college as an upperclassman, you're gonna fuck up a lot. Like, that's just inevitable. Making that next jump, there's always a lot of mistakes that happen. And I think it's healthy and it's refreshing from the sense of the common fan that doesn't get to see that on a day-to-day basis. to see, hey, a player can go out and struggle and have mistakes made, but it doesn't mean he's a bad player. It means he's learning. It means he's adapting. It means he's getting used to what it means to be an NFL running back. And then he goes out and he does it. And you see it when he starts to put it together. And it's like, oh, shit, okay, there is something. There's a reason that the Bears signed this guy and made it a priority to ensure that he was in camp as one of the running backs in that running back room.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then moving on to the other side of the football, I like the talking from this DB room. Like I like Jalen Johnson's little quips of, it's okay, it's not your fault. Like that. Those are nice. And then Jonathan Owens is a talker. Like I didn't know much about him, but that dude likes to talk a little bit. It's just fun to see that. And I really enjoyed the Jalen Johnson, Keenan Allen segment there. Like their back and forth was really, really fun to me.
Agreed. I if you got DBs that like to talk shit, that's a good DB. Like, let's be honest. That's the nature of the beast in the NFL, and it has for a long time. I think that's what they needed, though, in that secondary. Like, Jalen's always, I think, kind of had that very confident demeanor about him, even as a younger player. And, maybe you don't get to necessarily see it on a day-to-day basis because he's not mic'd up every game. But I think he's always had that. But you bring in a guy like that with Jonathan Owens. I think we got to see a really healthy amount of a guy like Kevin Byard. A little bit in the first episode, a lot of it from some of the stuff that the Bears have put out in terms of content, just directly from the source. Kind of what he brings as well to the table. And then I think you can see it, in just the way like a guy like Kyler Gordon plays as Spider-Man with the flips and everything like that. The Tyreek Stevenson, who's not afraid to, get up in guys' faces and be rough and be physical. This DB room's got some swag to it. And honestly, if there's anything I've ever learned from a defensive back group that plays in a defense that thrives off takeaways, the most dangerous trait you can allow a DB room to have is that swaggy confidence that this DB room has.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's there's a realness to, you need to believe it to do it, right? And I think that we're seeing some of that out there in this DB room. If they believe it and they're doing it in practice, like they are shutting down a very talented wide receiver core right now in practice, and albeit one that's learning a new offense and has some new faces, but still a very talented group. They've done a good job all through camp of holding them down. And I don't think that's because Keenan Allen and DJ Moore suddenly aren't very good. I think they're just doing a great job.
I was going to say, I think it speaks volumes when a wide receiver like Keenan Allen, who, let's be frank, you could turn the tape on from any year of his NFL career, and he's probably the best, if not top 3 route runners in the last decade. There's a reason that dude's always open, and it requires multiple people to cover him. Yeah. The fact that Jalen Johnson routinely shuts him down one-on-one, I don't think it's like you said, I don't think it's a shame to Keenan Allen or a DJ Moore. I think it's more of a props to a guy like Jalen Johnson. And one thing too, while we're on the topic here, and to me, the two took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I like that they highlighted that he was asked about, oh, you weren't in the top 100 despite being an all-pro player, despite being a Pro Bowler. How does that make you feel? And he's like, it's cool. He goes, next year it's going to be different. And that's when you have a player who just got the bag and he's still disrespected. That is the most dangerous thing on the face of the planet for anybody that he lines up against. Truly. Like, I think we are in store potentially for a Jalen Johnson first-team All-Pro season. Because I think a lot of us believe he deserved it a year ago.
Oh, he was
and robbed. I think the second team nod at least put him on the map. Like a first team All Pro this year, and you can just see it in the way he carries himself. And I'm glad that Hard Knocks highlighted that aspect of the player. It is still really weird seeing him wear number 1 though, after getting really accustomed to him wearing 33 for 4 years. I like it though, because like, it was his college number, right? And to me, in today's NFL, like, the guy that wears number 1 is, especially if he's playing defense, he's probably a badass. So
Yeah.
I like that Jalen Johnson's driving that number.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because like you said, that kind of quiet confidence that he has with it, like, yeah, I felt like it was wrong. And but I mean, they'll go learn today, and that's where that's where it feels like he's sitting out like, oh, they're gonna find out.
Oh yeah.
I was coming into the season kind of expecting I don't want to say a letdown, but a bit of a drop off in his numbers, in Jalen Johnson's numbers, because you look at last year and you say, okay, Tyreek Stevenson spent the first half of the season getting torched. He figured it out down the stretch. But what quarterback in their right mind was saying, oh, I'm going to test Jalen Johnson right now? Throughout the whole season, they're saying, no, we're going after the rookie. He's struggled. So I felt like the way that Tyreek Stevenson closed out the second half of last year would make a lot more offenses this season go, okay, well, now we have to attack Jalen some too. And that might just result in a bust here or there, like something more. But I mean, I don't know. Hearing him talk, it feels like he is gonna be right up there again. And I hope that's the case, because I do think he is gonna get attacked more this year.
I wonder if that just him getting attacked more might actually lead to more quote unquote big plays from Jalen Johnson too, right? Like I think a large reason why Jalen Johnson flew so far under the radar for the last few years is just because teams didn't physically attack him. And when they did, they didn't have a lot of success. So they tried as much as humanly possible to stay away from him as part of their game plan. Now, because like you said, because of the emergence of a Tyreek Stevenson on the other end, who sure might not be Jalen Johnson level corner, but he's still a very respectable number 2 corner. Maybe, just maybe, right? Everybody used to dog Jalen for the lack of interceptions. Maybe this is a year where we see a little bit of an uptick in that number. He had a respectable number last year. He had what, 4 last year, which is a very strong number in today's NFL. Maybe he has a 6 or a 7 pick season. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, ooh, okay, this is that guy, because now he's getting attacked more and he's still doing the exact same thing that he was doing before when teams were trying to stay away from him.
Yeah, no. And one other thing that I just want to kind of bring up, I've seen some people on, I guess, on Twitter talking about, well, Keenan Allen's slower than I thought. I just want to make this clear. If you've never watched much Keenan Allen before, Keenan Allen was never fast. This is not a guy who got old and slow all of a sudden. I mean, he's old, he's up there, and he is slow, but he's been slow. He wins with technique. He wins with deception in the route. Like, winning with speed has never been Keenan Allen's thing, and it never will be. So it's not something that I'm worried about, because it's like, yeah, Keenan Allen's slow. Well, I knew that when they got him, and maybe it wasn't as apparent to any, because I mean, I guess, the last 2 years, how often were the Chargers really on primetime games or on national TV? Like, it makes sense that you might not have seen a lot of them, but you go watch his highlights and try to figure out who he's faster than on the field. It's not that many guys he's going up against. That's not why he wins.
No. And I think that there's so many people I think that are just fans of football that fall in love with the raw intangibles of players, right? Just the pure skill of these guys, right? The speed of a guy like a Tyreek Hill, the finesse of some of these players, the finesse of a player like DJ Moore when you get the ball in his hands after the catch, right? But at the same time, there are so many guys that make careers out of just being technicians. If you're good at technique, you can get away with a lot of shit. I'll tell you right now, take it from me. I'm about 5'11" and a half on a good day, not even sniffing 6 foot. And the only reason I made it through playing college football was because of technique. I was not the biggest, I was not the fastest, I was not the strongest. But I promise you right now, if you told me, hey, we need you to take a freaking outside zone step and get to this guy, that's what I could do, because that's what I knew how to do. Mm-hmm. Keenan Allen's the same way. Keenan Allen is an elite route running technician. And honestly, as somebody who not only, I don't even want to just say just because I played the sport, just because I appreciate that aspect of the sport, that's why Keenan Allen's one of the best. because
Mhm.
Homeboy doesn't need to have the elite speed or the elite, oh, he's the nobody can touch him because he can do X, Y, Z. No, man, he's just gonna make you look stupid because he runs some of the best routes in the league. Devontae Adams was largely like that, still is like that. Like, yes, Devontae Adams is big and he's fast, but like that dude's a route running technician. There's a reason he's year in and year out one of the best receivers in football. Keenan Allen, exact same way. And again, I think a lot of Bears fans, specifically, like you said, Q, are robbed because the Chargers weren't on primetime games a lot. And most Bears fans aren't very, fine tuned into watching Chargers games. That's just Keenan Allen, man. Go turn on the highlight tape. Watch him run people out of their shoes because of the way that man runs routes.
Exactly. Now, let's get to our 4 questions here. So we're going to talk about our biggest surprise from the episode, our favorite moment, what we want more of, and what we think is coming up next. So starting with you, Ron, what was your biggest surprise in this episode?
I got kind of a little bit of a mix. My honorable mention, biggest surprise because it was funny, was Theo Benedict's replies to the eagle. Her eagle has landed comment sent me into a spiral of laughter for a good 5 minutes. Definitely enjoyed that aspect because that shit was funny. But Austin Booker, man. Austin Booker, like the highlight of him, like we talked about him. You and I talked about him on shows leading up to the draft, and I took him in a couple mock drafts and felt good about him. And I still remember on draft day when the pick came across that they had traded back into the 5th round to get him, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Bears took this kid from Kansas, Austin Booker, and I'm like, oh shit, I know a lot about Austin Booker because I felt like we looked into him more than the average fan. He doesn't look big, but he just plays like a bat out of hell.
He's long.
And he's long, right? Like, just think about that. Just give him a year to put on like real NFL strength. I honestly think, and I'm gonna sit here and I hope I can double down on this at the end of the season. I think Austin Booker might become one of the steals of this draft.
It's starting to feel that way, and I will always temper myself when I'm talking that way in a preseason because it's like it's just hard to know. I mean, this time a year ago we were talking about who was it? Terrell Lewis, I think it was, or something, who was tearing up all the preseason games, the edge rusher. The Bears ended up cutting
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to put too much weight on it, but man, I mean, we knew that Austin Booker was a guy who, if he went back to college, would be looking at a 1st or 2nd round grade. What was the idea, or not would be, but could be looking at a 1st or 2nd round grade, and he's looking like that dude right now. And one thing that I love to see the success from him. I love to see how well he's doing. I hope it doesn't get to his head here because, like, it didn't. I don't know. Part of me says it's nothing. The guy's feeling good, but at the end of the episode, he said, "Oh, I could have had 2 or 3 more," and I don't like to hear that. I don't love hearing that. But a part of me does because it's like it's the confidence that we were talking about earlier. But I don't know, from a 5th round rookie, I don't want to see that comfortable, and like maybe that's on the opponent for letting him feel that comfortable. But like I don't want you to feel, and some of this is probably PTSD from Fields, say when he was a rookie, saying I was expecting it to be harder. Like, so some of it's probably just that, but like I want to see him knowing that he still has work to do, and that's not the vibe I'm getting right now. And maybe I'm overreacting to that. And I don't think that the kid's done anything wrong or is not putting in the work or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just reading way too much into one comment at the end of a football game where he just kicked ass all game.
And I wonder too, though, if some of that comment is just the media being the media and spinning it out of context, right? Because they might have said, like, how do you feel about today's game? He might have said, oh, I felt really good out there. Like, I think I could have had 2 or 3 more in terms of sacks. but I need to get better at X, Y, and Z. And you might not just
Right.
heard that little piece at the end. So I think he's interesting because what I really liked about it was the interaction with him and Eric Washington. I think that's what I really enjoyed seeing was you could see that he cares. You could see that he's, hey, congratulations, young man. That's a big moment for you, right? Like you're already defying the odds. You're a 5th round pick. You're making an impact, even if it isn't preseason. But yeah, you just know like the way that Eberflus and this Bears defense just operates that like Montez Sweat sitting there in his back ear and is like, hey, bro, keep going. Like, don't stop. Don't be satisfied.
Yeah.
Like, be that dog. Be that dog on the other side for the next 4 years. It's you and me. It's 94 and 98 going after the quarterback on a routine basis. So I understand the fear, Q, because I think all Bears fans have PTSD in some way, shape, or form. I have it all the time. I get that also from being a Cubs fan. I know you can relate to that as well. But I'll tell you what, man, like it was cool to see that out of him too, because I also like that, you know, at the end of the day, it wasn't just sacks, right? He had a couple tackles for loss, which means he's getting involved in the run game. And that's obviously a huge part of being a 4-3 D end in the Bears scheme. So he's a guy that I'm excited to watch the growth of Austin Booker.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's my biggest surprise.
Yeah, and I think that's some of my hesitation with it because I truly believe he has tools to be very, very good in this league. And you look at the type of edge rushers who do tend to defy the odds as later round picks. They have some of the traits that Austin Booker does. You know, I mean, Max Crosby was very similar in the idea of like very long arms. His you know, speed might not be up to where you want it to be, but like he had that same bendiness and length that can really play well in this league and kind of get overlooked a little bit because some of the other measurables might not quite be there. So I truly believe that Booker has a chance to really be something in this league, and I just don't want to see it get wasted, you know. And so I might be hyper cautious on that. But moving to my biggest surprise. And maybe it's not a surprise to some people. I thought Velus was just on this roster, if I'm being frank. And I'm getting the vibe that he is truly on the bubble and Ian Wheeler is on his ass right now. I mean, fumbling that kick return can't help him.
No. No way. But then you wonder, too, though, like, who the hell else are you going to put back at kick return, right? I mean...
Ian Wheeler.
Yeah, you could put Wheeler back there. You could put DeAndre Carter back there if they keep him on the roster.
Right.
I know Rome has been involved more on punt than kick, especially with the new rules in terms of a kicker or of the kickoffs. Excuse me, but yeah, man, I think that's part of the reason that the Velus running back experiment's a thing right now, right? Because especially in today's NFL, unless you're Devin Hester. It's really hard to carry. And look at even Devin Hester. Even Devin Hester became a serviceable wide receiver. You know what I mean? He wasn't a wide receiver, but he was a Hall of Fame kick returner, and he was serviceable at least at one other position. Like they found a reason to keep him on the roster. Right now, Velus is truly just a kick returner, and he's not even necessarily great at that. So
I mean, we talked about on a previous show.
Yeah.
Returning a kick is going to be different. The kickers are going to get different spin on the football. They're going to try to find ways to make you mess up. And 100%. He's going to have to figure out how to deal with that. And early indication is might be an issue for him.
It could be. It really could be. And, you know, I think that could become a position battle that we didn't know existed over the course of, you know, the last couple weeks, couple months even. Who's that depth running back? Because I would make the argument right now, even to Q. I mean, I know we haven't really seen a whole lot of them in the last couple of episodes, but like beyond DeAndre Swift, who is truly guaranteed to be on this roster at the running back position? Travis Homer because he's a special teamer?
I think Roshan is a lock. I mean, I'm probably the last person to oversell you on Roshan, but I mean, being only in his second season and being a guy who can play special teams and a guy who can be in there for pass pro and run routes, like I think Roshan is a lock on this roster. But that third running back, I mean, I have a really hard time buying, and this could be wrong on my part, but I have a really hard time buying that Shane Waldron looks at Khalil Herbert and his explosiveness, his burst, and says, I can't work with that. When
Yeah.
Shane Waldron had Kenneth Walker last year in Seattle, who can't play in pass pro, can't really run routes, but found ways to get him explosive runs and explosive screen passes because he's just an explosive football player and you're going to work with it. To me, Khalil Herbert is Kenneth Walker light, right? He's not up to par with Kenneth Walker, but he has a similar level of explosiveness and a similar level of like vision and patience as a runner that it's just really hard to say, oh, we can't use that on our football team.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a good point. And I think because I would almost make the argument too that, like, to me, Travis Homer feels like he's probably a lock to make this roster too. Like, the Bears are realistically probably going to carry 4 running backs, which if that's the case, those positions are locked up. So if Valus is finding a way to make the roster, it's him saying, hey, look, like, you would be carrying another receiver, but like, you can put me out of the backfield and let me become a running back of sorts too, and kind of be a Swiss Army knife to make this team. Because I would make the argument right now, if the Bears have it their way, Wheeler's probably a practice squad guy, is my guess. If they can swing that, where the hell do you put Valus? So I agree with Q. I think that is interesting. Is like, has Ryan Poles finally said, hey, I know you were a 3rd round pick 2 years ago, but like, you got to get your shit together here, kid. Otherwise, we are going to cut you because there's damn good football players in camp right now that could easily take your roster spot.
Yeah. I mean, the level of competition is there this year where it hasn't been in past years to really push him and say, you know, there might not be room here for you. So
yeah,
he needs to catch the rest of his kicks, and he needs to keep showing some stuff as a running back. So he did show some stuff as a running back.
indeed.
Now, your favorite moment of the episode, Round?
We got to keep it simple. Roma Dunze did a beautiful job taking me back to 2007. When I thought black jeans were in, and I used to wear those with American Eagle and Abercrombie t-shirts in middle school. Oh yeah. The Kiss Kiss rendition in the in letting all the team know that he makes $13 million as a signing bonus, I think was my favorite part of the episode. Just again, that's always what I've enjoyed about Hard Knocks, is like the silly, funny shit. Obviously I enjoy the stuff on the football field and on the, in the, the meeting rooms and things like that. Like, that's a huge part of what makes Hard Knocks, but like, you gotta get a little bit of that involved. And again, I appreciate the song choice. Roma Dunze is young enough, right? I'm old enough now, right? Where like, he could have sang something Lil Yachty or one of these guys that like I don't particularly listen to, but no, he decided to throw it back, and not just Chris Brown, but like young Chris Brown with some T-Pain. Oh, Roma Dunze got brownie points for his song choice. So chef's kiss. That was my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah. For me, also simple. DJ Moore catches a pass, stiff arms his guy down to the ground, takes 2 more guys down with him, and just lays in the ground screaming, I like football.
I like football.
That's just an amazing moment. It's hard to beat that in my book. Like, that is just like, I had a few other ideas here written down at that time, and that crossed my mind. I was like, I like football. That's what the Bears have been trying to build. That's why they paid this guy. He is what they want in a football player, and he showed it right there. I like football.
That was a good one. I literally wrote that. You'll appreciate this, Q. So my notes are probably not nearly as clean as yours. I can tell you that right now. For example, like, my first note was clubbing ? Fishnets ? You go in clubbing. But literally when it got to that point, it's just in quotes, all caps, I like football, DJ. Like, because it was an electric part of the
great moment.
It's a great soundbite. Like that. To me, that's a soundbite that by the morning, it's going to be clipped. It's going to be everywhere in social media. And then when like DJ Moore makes some big play in like week 7 of the NFL season, that thing's going to get resurfaced. And it's just going to be DJ Moore getting up screaming, I like football. And then we're all going to love it. And it's just going to live on through the whole year.
So you're telling me I need to go screen grab that and then save it for later?
I think you do.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want to see more of, Ron?
I want to see more of what we saw with like JJ and Keenan, but not necessarily just those two, right? Like I want to see more of the battles in camp. I feel like, you know, we've been able to get the feel for like Caleb Williams and his growing process. I know we've gotten a little bit of an introduction with guys like Roman Dunze, but like we haven't gotten any like battles, right? We haven't gotten like that's the only real like quote unquote battle we've really gotten to see in camp so far is Jalen Johnson versus Keenan. And just unfortunately, because that's the nature of practice, whether you like it or not, people, I can confirm it. You do a lot more reps in individuals where you're going against another position group than you ever will in a actual true team setting. We used to run when I was in college, like 30 plays. We used to do as an offensive versus defensive line, we used to do like 45 one-on-ones. That's just the nature of the beast. But I want to see more of that. I like that shit. That shit's cool. And you get a lot of really good sound bites typically out of that kind of stuff because guys are intense and you know, there's too many good personalities on this team for them to not have better. So I want to see a couple more of those. And honestly, okay, I think Scott was on to something here from a little bit earlier. Jared Hardknocks. Where the hell is Tory Taylor? I want to see some more about the crocodile punter, and you know, just enjoy more of the sound bites and the battles of what makes training camp. I think that's what I wanted to see more because I truly enjoyed the shit out of the JJ versus Keenan thing because I think that's just two incredible players going at each other and displaying their craft and on the football field, and I enjoyed the hell out of that.
I'm muted. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and that's something that, you know, it almost plays back into my what I want more of, but I'm gonna start off and come full circle at the end. So I want to see more of two things. One is DeMarcus Walker. Where the hell is DeMarcus Walker? He's the loudest man on this team.
That's true.
I want to see the fun that is DeMarcus Walker. He's putting out, you know, videos of him after Caleb's drafted, and like the guy is not afraid of the camera. But we haven't seen him outside like walking or standing next to someone who's talking to him. Like I want to see his personality shine, and we're not going to get it, but I want to see something about Nate Davis. It's the biggest looming question of the Bears training camp. It needs to be addressed at some point. I don't know if it will because the Bears have final rights on everything that goes out there, but I want it. And the way that this is going to come full circle, in my world, where I get production rights on Hard Knocks, I want to see DeMarcus Walker against Nate Davis in one-on-ones, mic'd up, and I want to hear every word that is said because I do not think those two are getting along when they're going up against each other in one-on-ones.
No, you're probably right. I highly doubt it that they are. And I'll be honest with you, again, as somebody that's been in those one-on-ones between O-line and D-line, some funny shit can get said. And like it might just be in like the kind of the heat of the moment and the heat of the competition, but like something from DeMarcus Walker about Nate Davis being a lazy fat ass is like exactly what I want to hear on Hard Knocks, and just put it out for the world to see at the end of the day.
And to be clear, we're not calling him a lazy fat ass.
Oh no,
but we think DeMarcus Walker might.
Maybe it's possible.
So, Ron, what do you think is coming next?
You know what? I think one thing we haven't seen yet that I'm almost not disappointed. I'm disappointed because it's something I've expected to see and we haven't. And it's like that free space on the bingo card that I can't mark yet. Like just more shit about Chicago, right? Like we really haven't gotten that because everything's up at Hallis Hall. And obviously for anybody that's from Chicago knows that Hallis Hall is a fucking hike from the actual city of Chicago. Lake Forest, way the hell up there north. But like outside of the intro, And even the intro, I think, is horrendously underwhelming from like a Bears tradition, the city of Chicago sense. And I mean that with the full marching arms in accordance there. I feel like because this is the one preseason coming up now that'll be on this next episode, that'll be at home for the Bears. I think we're going to see a lot more like this is happening in Chicago. Like the only thing we really got to see was DJ Moore and his kids going to the Museum of Ice Cream. Like that's all we got to see. That was actually like in Chicago. I think we're going to get more of that taste of like the team doing things in the city, maybe some with the fans because it is actually at Soldier Field for the game and for this third preseason game. I think we're going to get more of that. So that's what I'm expecting to see coming up here in the next episode.
So I've got 3 things here. The first, so I already touched on a little bit, some of the local legends. I think we're going to start to see something here with them. Second,
and you called that out like a month and a half ago when we were doing the Bears on Tap show. You're like, I can't wait to see them talk about the local legends. Like it's on. People can pull the clips. It's on Bears on Tap.
Yeah, absolutely. And then second, I think we're gonna get Austin Booker highlight after the game he had. I was surprised we didn't get more Colin Johnson this episode, if I'm being honest. I bet you they were prepared to, but then he didn't make a lot of noise in the preseason games. They might have cut it out. But I think that Austin Booker, 2 straight performances, he's probably going to have, it's looking more and more like he's going to have a real role on this team. I bet you we get more of a highlight on him. And then the third, selfishly, as a Texas Tech Red Raider alumni, I want to see the introduction of the Jalen Hutchings, the recent undrafted free agent signing, defensive tackle out of the Texas Tech University of Champions. Heard it here first. I want to see what Jalen Hutchings has to say, has to do. Texas Tech does an off-season show or like a training camp show called The Brand, where there's like 5 or 6 episodes a year on YouTube. Jalen Hutchings was highlighted on like 2 of them last year. He's fun in front of the camera. I want to see the big dude talk. I want to see him having fun out there because I think that Jalen Hutchings can offer something on this roster. And I am extremely biased in that statement, but I believe that he has the goods to do it.
I love that. Q is somebody who bleeds pride for the university they attended. I fully support everything that you just laid out on us there with Hutchins.
Beautiful. So, Ron, how soon are you going to get a hot dog flavored ice cream?
I didn't even know it existed until this episode of Hard Knocks.
I still don't know why.
The correct answer would be yesterday, but I don't know, man. I'm tempted. I have a reputation to uphold when it comes to hot dogs, as anybody that listens to Cubs on Tap knows. So yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to get up there. I will be honest with you. I've seen the Museum of Ice Cream like before, and I've been always intrigued by it. I am now even more intrigued by it, especially knowing that there's a ball pit of fake hot dogs that you can be thrown into. I think that's the real winner there for me. So if you can throw me in a ball pit of hot dogs, not real hot dogs, plastic hot dogs, allowing me to sample just the most obnoxious flavors of ice cream imaginable, sign me up. I'm fucking in. Let's get the camera. Let's roll down there. I'll try everything. I don't care. It looks fun though. It looked a lot of fun. I will say that too. Can we talk about that takeaway really quick? It was really cool that they highlighted the interactions with Keenan and DJ, though. I think that was really, really neat about this episode. Just again, showing the natural humanity of these guys as human beings and hanging out with their kids. Like I feel like that's a staple of at least one episode every year in Hard Knocks is a couple of the players like kind of with their families.
Yeah.
Very happy that was highlighted. I did see, I think it was either Scott or Timmy Sue said a little bit earlier, though, about DJ Moore, his kid into the ball pit as one of his favorite moments. It was a good one. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. But, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think for me, DJ Moore's face after trying the hot dog flavored ice cream was all I needed to know. I'm out.
It's probably the most heinous thing ever. Like, personally would never want to try. At that point, like just give me a regular hot dog.
Yeah.
I'll eat like I'll hike my ass down Clark Street right now and go and get a hot dog. Like
Yeah.
I don't want, if I'm going to the Museum of Ice Cream, like give me that moose tracks, or that just like classic chocolate.
Yeah, give me the good stuff.
Yeah, give me the good stuff. Give me the good stuff. Even if it is weird colors, right? They had pink vanilla flavored ice cream. Give me Bear's orange vanilla flavored ice cream. I'm in. Down.
Yeah.
I'll do it right now.
All right. Well, I think that's all we got for this episode. So thank you guys for watching, for listening, for commenting. Love you guys in the comments. And make sure to go check out ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago Bears and Chicago sports needs. We've got podcast content for all the major sports here in Chicago. We've got written content for all of them as well. ontapsportsnet.com. And Ron, what do you say we get out of here the only way we know how?
That's a good old classic. Bear down, baby.
Bear down.